What is a creepy experience that later turned out to have a rational explanation? As a teenager, me and my friends played with Ouija boards. One night we were screwing around with it and the TV randomly turned on. It was 4 AM and we could all see the remote on the coffee table, so we were reasonably freaked out. We asked whatever was there to turn the TV off for us and it just went wild. Changing channels, switching inputs, the works. We unplugged the thing and went to bed. Found out about a year later that we were being too loud and waking my dad up, so he bought a universal remote. A1 parenting skills. I grew up in a very rural area of Scotland with very limited public transport. I usually had to walk about 3 miles to get the bus into the local village. This was fine during the day summer, but scary as heck at night winter, as the road was surrounded by large chunks of forest, then fields, then forest, then fields all the way home. Sometimes one of my parents would get me from the bus stop if it was really dark or crap weather. One night it's rather dark and lots of cloud cover meant there was no stars or moon to light my way, and my mum was late picking me up. I started walking anyway, and a few minutes later I could hear something big coming through the trees. There was no discernible footfalls, just something moving through the brush. I was convinced I was going to die. I was going to be raped and murdered on the side of the road by some fat ass serial killer coming at me through the forest. Suddenly the noise stopped. There was some shuffling, then a sound I'll never fricking forget. A man coughed. I started running for home and the fricking bastard started running with me. He was keeping pace with me along the right side of the road. I thought he was running alongside me while looking for an opening in the fence between the forest and the road. As I came up the first bend in the road, the whole forest was illuminated by the headlights of my mum's car as she came along the road from the other direction. So I looked back to see what death was going to look like and just about fell over. I stopped. My chaser stopped. I swore. My chaser fricking bleated at me. It was 3 sheep. 3 of my own sheep who had escaped the field and gotten stuck in the forest. In my college dorm, my friend and I once were playing Xbox. We then went on our laptops to do something else but left the Xbox on. After about half an hour, the screen started flickering before the picture of some chick in what was a dorm bathroom appeared. We both immediately freaked out. He hid under his bed covers and I dove behind the couch. We experienced a lot of creepy things in that room, so our first thought was that it was a ghost trying to communicate. I eventually used the controller to get out of that screen. We calmed down and went back to our laptops. Once again, the Xbox loaded a picture, but it was different than the first one. That's when I started suspecting something else was going on. A quick Google search revealed that there had recently been an update which installed Glass or something like that. It's a piece of software that automatically shares files from other devices on the same network. The update had turned it on and we had no idea. It was simply pulling up pictures from other students' computers. It'd take a pretty hip ghost to communicate through an Xbox, though. Back in the 80s there was a train derailment in my neighborhood rumored to have spilled radioactive material. This is important later. It's now the late 90s. I'm being silly with friends, just walking around on a summer night at maybe 3 AM. Suddenly I see a grotesque monster that chills me to the bone. It almost looks like a rat, but it's way bigger with huge claws. My mind is racing to identify it and amp. I finally think, holy crap. That radioactive spill must have been worse than I thought, because it mutated the rat into these giant monsters, so I start freaking the heck out. Bad. My friends stopped, but not because of the mutated beast. They're all laughing at me. And that's the first time this city girl ever saw possum. Imagine if it had been an armadillo or something. You'd have had packed up and left the city. Prison story. I got to work at 6 AM and we were on lockdown. At 3:30 AM CCTV saw someone walking around in one of the shops. Every inmate was woken up for a 4 AM standing count. Everybody over 2,000 inmates was accounted for. We watched the video. It was creepy. You could see a ghost walking around in one of the shops through the window. But then someone figured out what it really was. There was an officer checking the shop area and it was his reflection in the window. Well, at least you know that Karev wasn't a vampire. I was alone in the house, taking a bath, when I heard someone downstairs playing the new keyboard my husband had bought. At first, they were terrible, sort of like a kid banging on the keys. But then, Suddenly, they got really good and played song after song flawlessly. I hurriedly got dressed and ran downstairs. I think I may have been holding a hairdryer in my hand as a makeshift weapon, only to find that one of our cats had walked around on the keyboard, somehow turned it on, walked across a few keys, and then somehow lay down on the demo button that plays a series of pre-programmed songs to show off the features. Years ago I was having a smoke outside my house. I was out the back door. It was pitch dark, and there's a canal at the bottom. I started hearing this noise from across the canal, irregularly, a kind of weird harsh croaking that I couldn't identify, and the more I stayed out smoking and listening, it approached, came across the canal, then crossed my porch, kept coming until it was just about at the bottom of the path I was standing on. And being pitch dark I still couldn't see it, was kinda bricking it that some creature had come up out of the field beyond or the water to come get me. It took me years to work out that since I was pretty stoned at the time it was almost certainly just a duck and my hearing was frazzled. Quack quack mother. So this happened right after the first Paranormal Activity was released on DVD. My sister and I were visiting my grandparents in the middle of nowhere, up in the mountains. So one night, we all watched the movie. It was super scary, and then we head to bed. No big deal. A storm hit that night, and it was raining and the wind was blowing all crazy. Lightning, thunder, the works. Well, my sister and I were sleeping in the loft up above the garage, which is kinda creepy BC it's not directly connected to the house. There's an unlocked back door to garage, ect. So my sister and I are up in the loft, and at some point I wake up. It's pitch black, and all I can hear are heavy footfalls. Someone is coming up the stairs. I do that stage whisper shout thing, sister, and she's just like I hear it. We keep waiting, and waiting, and waiting. It's pretty clear that whoever is coming up the stairs isn't getting anywhere. So we turn on the lights, creep over, and OFC there's nothing there. It turns out it was a wind chime hung on the backside of the garage. It was hitting the siding at fairly regular intervals from the wind. I braved the storm to take it down and then we went back to sleep. I've been having issues off and on with weird crap happening in my home. It's settled down lately, but I'm still jumpy. I woke up this morning at 3 AM to a low, pulsing, snarling growl coming from somewhere in my bedroom. Room is pitch black, and I couldn't pinpoint where the sound was coming from. It was eerie enough that it gave me goosebumps. I probably laid there a good 3 or 4 minutes, completely terrified, not wanting to move before I finally decided to go for the knife I keep hidden in my headboard. As soon as I moved, the sound stopped, followed by an inquisitive meow, and out from under the bed pops my cat. And that is how I discovered that not only does my cat snore like a possessed hellbeast when she has a cold, she has also burrowed up into my box spring and made a nest directly under my head. I laughed hard at this one, haha. I woke up parched in the middle of the night and rolled off the bed toward the door on my way to get a glass of water. There right in front of me was a black woman-shaped mass where there shouldn't be one. It was only when my fist connected with it that I remembered I'd moved my sewing dummy in order to get at something the night before. Doh. It's nice that your first instinct was to fricking punch the ghost. First time I went water skiing was on this disgustingly dirty river. The joys of being a carefree teenager. I fell a good few times, but one time managed to fall and land in an area of dense waterweed. Next thing I know something brushes past my leg. I have a mild heart attack and then whatever brushed past me grabs me and starts pulling me under. Pretty sure I screamed like a girl before realizing the boat had turned around and I had somehow managed to get tangled in the rope. Geez, you're lucky it wasn't around your neck. I lived in a house that the rest of my family still claims is haunted from a pile of various freaky things that happened there, but I'm inclined to believe there was some boring explanation for all of it. One event in particular sticks out because it followed a couple of other very strange unexplained ones but had a perfectly reasonable explanation. My mom's bedroom had an attached bathroom she would use to get ready in the morning. While brushing her teeth around the same time every morning, she swore she could hear faint echoing creepy children's laughter. Every time she'd hear it, she'd run out to get myself or my sister to come verify it, but by the time we'd get there it would have stopped. Finally one day she runs out and tells both of us to come hear it again for probably the 10th time. I roll my eyes and follow her, while my sister gets the idea to go outside and look around. Just as I get to the bathroom to hear yet again no children's laughter, we both hear my sister laughing hysterically from the front porch. She had gotten out there just in time to see a school bus pulling away after picking up a load of kids from the school bus stop next door, right by the corner of the house the bathroom was situated. Was talking to mom about this question when she reminded me of something. I must have been about 8 or 9 at the time. I was sleeping with my arm hanging on the edge of the bed one night when I felt something lick my hand. At first I was too deep in slumber to actually notice it, but then it happened again and I lost it. Braving myself, turned over to look below and didn't find anything. Thinking it must have been a bad dream, I tried to sleep again but couldn't, for obvious reasons, and the rest of the night was spent thinking about the supernatural and cowering under the blanket. Cue the next morning, I'm telling mom and dad what happened over tea and they're laughing their butt off when suddenly, from my bedroom, we hear the maid scream. Turns out a stray dog had somehow found its way into the house. We have no idea how that could have happened as it is a pretty bustling house. Yesterday and found a spot under my bed to rest since my room was considerably warmer than the others. Ended up giving my monster under the bed some milk and crackers before shooing it away. Maybe that stray dog chased away the man who was hiding under your bed, licking your hand. I saw spirits in between being awake and falling fully asleep. The encounters were really disturbing and freaked me out for a while. Later figured out that it was a symptom of my brain going back to normal after taking antidepressants for 5+ years. The brain does weird crap with withdrawals. That seems really scary. Hope you're okay now. I was sitting marking some student work late one night in the living room. The apartment had one of those old-fashioned window-mounted air conditioners mounted near the ground. It was turned off. Well, heard some rattling coming from it and I kind of figured it was a mouse or rat. I get back to marking but the rattling continues. I look up again and the rat comes out and takes flight. Well, I was only 27, because if I was a lot older I'm sure I'd have had a heart attack. It took me a good few seconds to figure out it was a bat, but in those few seconds my world was completely out of whack. I was all alone in my house at midnight with every light turned off except for my room and decided to go for a snack. As I was walking past my sister's room, I heard her TV turn on. She used to have those old big butt TVs that made like a bang noise when turning on. So I immediately walked towards her room and as I was getting closer I could hear the TV getting louder and louder. The fricking volume was increasing on its own so I noped the frick out and went back to my room. After a while, the volume was probably at max so I had to go turn it off. As I approach her room again I think okay I'll just extend my hand real quick and turn on the light and just as I am about to do it I took a small look into her dark room and I saw the silhouette of a tall man in the middle of her room just standing there, completely still. It scared the crap out of me but I extended my hand anyways and turned on the lights. It was a freaking chair with a huge pile of cloth and on the very top of the pile there was a coat with the arms completely extended so in the dark it actually looked like a person's arms. Holy frick it scared me though but at least I managed to turn off the TV, though I was still scared about it turning on by itself and the volume thing. Next day I told my sister all that had happened and she told me the freaking TV had a timer that would either turn the TV on or off at a certain time depending on whether it was already on or off. And since it was an old model, every time it turned on the volume would start at 0 and slowly rise until it was back at the volume it had the last time it had been turned off. In the end it was pretty funny and had a dumb explanation but holy frick it scared me and I didn't sleep at all that night. A lot of these comments about TVs and timers makes you wonder if they're really haunted. I lived in a rural area with raccoons, possums and squirrels running around my yard frequently. One day I'm in my room and I hear scratching at the wall from what sounds like outside. No big deal. probably one of the rodents rooting around for food. A few minutes go by and I hear it sporadically, and I'm starting to get concerned something might be inside the outer wall because of the volume. I decide to ignore it and fire up one of my many video games in the entertainment center, facing the suspect wall. As I'm playing Resident Evil, sitting in my ex-rocker with my feet up against the bottom of the entertainment center, I hear another thud and feel it shake. I now realize whatever is making the noise isn't coming from outside my house, but inside the bottom cabinet of the piece of furniture. I grab an old dog kennel, put on long sleeves pants and a paintball mask, face the kennel towards the cabinet, and prepare myself. Opening the door as quickly as possible and shoving the kennel forward to trap the beast, I see my Xbox. The fricking disc tray kept trying to open but didn't have enough room due to the closed cabinet door. 6/10 better than rabid raccoon. My husband works nights so I'm usually home alone with our 2 girls, and I'm careful about keeping the doors locked because I get paranoid. One night I was carrying the laundry upstairs and heard a man talking in the house. I started to panic, thinking someone broke in, and worrying about how I was going to protect my sleeping kids. It took me a bit to figure out my phone was in my pocket and the laundry basket hit it, triggering Siri to speak through a Bluetooth speaker. When I had got my phone the year before, I was playing with the settings and changed Siri to a man, and never used it, so I completely forgot. My great aunt loved her perfume. She had a big collection, and after she passed, my mom had a few of her bottles of perfume. One night we went over to my grandma's house, and when we got home one of the bottles was shattered all over the bathroom floor. This being less than a week after she passed was really strange. We told the entire family about this and we all believed it was her spirit. About 10 years later we found out it was my little sister, who was 8 at the time and accidentally dropped it and went along with the ghost story because she thought she would get in trouble. I was looking for a birthday present for a friend. Her being a massive lover of dogs and me spending hours each week hunting down goodies and games at the local flea market, I figured a plushie of a dog would be perfect. My first hunt afterward at the market proved fruitful, and I soon was walking back home with a rather large and cute doggo plush that caught my eye. At the time, my best option to wash any big plushies was to leave them soaking water and laundry detergent in the family bathtub for a bit, coming back later and washing the heck out of them before hanging them. A few hours and a heavy wet doggo later, I started washing it for real. As soon as I started, I hear a little metallic sound and I get annoyed, fearing that I didn't notice a voice box in the doggo and destroyed it. I squish it for a bit trying to find where the box could be before giving up and returning to ringing, to only notice it was dripping something else rather than water. Blood. I start examining my hands wondering if I didn't wound myself. Nothing. I grab the dog and wring it for a bit, confirming that it was the actual bleeder. 21 years old me start panicking and leaves the bathroom. I manage to calm down and come back to the doggo with a pair of scissors before starting to open the stitches at its side and opening it. Taking out the wool slowly, I notice there was a black thrash bag inside the dog. I quickly extract it and open it. A now destroyed by water washing bag of razor blades, a B+ small blood bag, and a bag of white powder. The razors managed to pierce the blood bag while I was washing, causing the bleeding. But now I started panicking. This is Tunisia in 2010. Having a picture of drugs on your phone can send you 10 years behind bars. Cue me grabbing multiple black trash bags and put the guy in them. Spill an entire bottle of bleach in the bathtub. Yes, bad idea. And quickly throw the wrapped doggo in the public trash. Result, a bleach smelling bathtub for a week. A bleach burned hand and thrasher for me for double that time. And a still lingering question. I can get the drug and razors, but why the blood bag? And why in a dog plush? TLDR. Bleeding demon doggo plush turned out to have a blood bag and drugs inside it, scaring me even worse. More questions than answers, and I'm so angry this isn't one of the top comments. I grew up in north central Wisconsin, middle of nowhere. Our house was surrounded by a large forest, which was surrounded by both more forest and some farmers' fields. We didn't have much for neighbors. This happened sometime in the mid-90s. One spring night when I was about 8 or 9, I woke up to go to the bathroom. On my way back to bed, I glance out our back window into the forest in our backyard. Suddenly several large lights flooded through the trees into our house. I lost my crap. I knew what was back there. Just forest and field. Clearly, we were in the middle of an alien invasion. It was the only explanation. I was an avid X-Files fan as well as a lover of the paranormal. Clearly a popular kid in middle school. I ran and made sure the doors and windows were locked, keeping one eye on the lights, praying that I wouldn't see a grey darting through the trees. After I secured the perimeter, I figured it would be a good time to wake up my parents so they could unlock the hunting rifles and call the FBI sire. I ran to their room and woke them up by essentially screaming nouns at them. Aliens. Forest. FBI. My dad groggily followed me to get a view of our alien-infested backyard. He finally put everything I was saying together before he burst out in what I only can describe as a giggling fit. You see, the neighbors bought a brand new piece of farm equipment. A nice new tractor that came outfitted with some shiny, new and very bright floodlights. Because of this new equipment, they were able to do farm work any time of the day or night. They owned the field behind our forest, and were going to plant corn there. My dad still teases me about the alien invasion. Plot twist, the neighbors were aliens. I was taking out the trash in the neighborhood that our apartment was in. I must have been around 14 or so. It was late and it was kind of foggy out, and considering it was late, it already put me on edge. I threw the trash bag in. I had 2 bags with me, and as I threw the first bag in, something jumped out from the trash bin in my direction and I swung at it with the second bag, barely hitting it. Then I realized it was a cat digging around in the trash that I scared. That poor kitty. In high school, my friends and I had been at a party. None of us could drive, so we had to walk a friend home. On the way back to the house we were sleeping at, there was a car driving slowly and seemed to be following us. We turned down the next block and started walking a little faster. The car kept following at the same slow pace. Tipsy teenage girls, out after curfew, in a time before cell phones. We were creeped out. Finally we get to my friend's house and hustle inside, only to see the car drive past her house and the driver tosses a newspaper into her driveway. Yep, just the newspaper guy delivering at 4 AM. I must admit, I have been scared by the newspaper delivery driver more than once. Heading out for a sunrise run, and someone pulls into my driveway and rolls down the window and tosses a newspaper out before going on their merry way. Last summer I got sick and one night I had to stay in this like doctor room with lots of beds. For like an hour that night I felt this wind on me and it kept coming back, and there was no open windows or holes in the wall, so I thought it was a ghost and talked to it for like an hour, but then I turned on a lamp and it was a mosquito. That's the most wholesome ghost story I ever read. I was driving on the highway coming up on an overpass when I saw a red bicycle with no rider traveling merrily along on that overpass. It really startled me and I spent the next moments trying to figure out a rational explanation for what I saw. My guess was the bike was mounted on the roof of a car and from the angle all I could see was the bike. Living in an old house, you rationalizes every supernatural events happening because of old wiring, old floorboards, and squirrels skittering between the walls. As someone who lives in an old house, you seem to have it backwards. Shortly after The Ring came out on DVD, my family watched it. On the special features you can watch the video. Seconds after the video ended our phone rang. I'm pretty sure we all screamed. It was my aunt calling. My husband decided, for security purposes, to leave the old baby monitor on downstairs, where we could hear anything going on while in our room upstairs asleep. He got it all set up and we went up to go to bed. I was in the bedroom and he in the bathroom when this explosion sounded from the baby monitor. I tried to explain to him what the noise was, but since we hadn't heard anything else and the dogs weren't reacting, we just wrote it off. The next morning, he said he had a lot of trouble sleeping because every time he dozed off, there would be this explosion kind of sound from the monitor. Then we realized it was the same noise that I'd heard the night before. Then we realized he had the monitor placed on top of the fridge and it was the ice maker. That one cracked me up. My wife and I rented a little cabin in the mountains once and the ice maker would make a noise loud enough to wake you up. Horrible, terrible screaming in the woods in the middle of nowhere. Literally every forest animal, fox, coyote, mountain lion, some owls. Sounds like a woman being tortured to death. If I heard the actual voice of a screaming woman being tortured to death in the woods, I would just be like, stupid coyotes, and keep going. Serial killers should take advantage of that more. My aunt once went searching through the woods with a flashlight one night because she was sure a baby had been abandoned. She found a fox. City folk. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.